Captain Alara Voss gripped the controls of the battered shuttle, her knuckles whitening against the worn plasteel as the asteroid belt loomed like a graveyard of shattered dreams. Alarms blared, red lights pulsing across the cockpit, but she ignored them, eyes locked on the nav screen where a faint signal blinked. Earth's last orbital relay, or what was left of it. "Hold her steady, Jax," she muttered through gritted teeth, sweat beading on her forehead despite the chill of recycled air. Jax, her engineer and the only other soul aboard, hunched over the auxiliary console, fingers flying across patched wiring. He was wiry, all sharp angles and quicker wit, the kind that kept them alive through 3 system jumps already. "Steady as a drunkard's promise, Cap. But if that rock clips us, we're confetti." A chunk of debris pinged off the hull, vibrating through the deck like a warning shot. He didn't flinch, just rerouted power from life support to thrusters. Breathing be damned. The signal strengthened, resolving into a distress beacon from the old United Earth station, silent for decades since the fall. Ilara's jaw tightened. Her parents had died there, vaporized when the alien armada glassed the planet below. Peaceful, they'd called the galaxy back then. Treaties and trade routes, humans as the eager newcomers shaking hands with stars. Honest now it was. Survival meant scavenging the bones. "We're going in. Suit up." Jack shot her a glance, his dark eyes narrowing under the flicker of a dying bulb. "You sure? That station's a tomb, ghosts and vacuum leaks." But he was already clipping his harness, grabbing the emergency kit. Meds, tools, a pulse rifle that had seen better days. No arguments. That was their rhythm, forged in the refugee camps of Proxima. The shuttle bucked as Ilara threaded it through the belt, engines whining in protest. A larger asteroid tumbled into view, its surface pitted with craters that mirrored her resolve. She banked hard, the G-forces pinning them to their seats, and the station emerged from the shadows. A skeletal wheel, half its spokes sheared off, drifting like a forgotten relic. Docking clamps engaged with a metallic groan, sealing them to the airlock. Ilara unstrapped first, her boots thudding against the grating. The air tasted metallic, laced with the faint ozone of failing seals. Jax followed, helmet under arm, his cautious nature showing in the way he scanned the corridor with a handheld scanner. Life signs 0. Powers flickering on emergency cells. "We got maybe an hour before it vents." She nodded, leading the way into the dim guts of the station. Bulkheads bore the scars of the attack. Scorched metal, frozen debris suspended in 0G. Their lights cut through the gloom, revealing faded murals of Earth. Blue oceans, green continents, a lie shattered long ago. Ilara's gloved hand brushed a console, bringing up a holographic log. "Captain's report, final entry," a ghostly voice echoed. "The Krigari fleet. No warning. We're holding the line, but..." Static swallowed it. Jax whistled low. "Krigari. Those tentacled bastards turned the peace into a purge. What are we after, Cap? Data? Parts?" "Both," Ilara said, her voice steady despite the knot in her chest. The challenge hit her then, raw and immediate. The station's core databanks held the schematics for humanity's old warp drives, the kind that could outrun any alien hunter. But accessing them meant crossing the irradiated engineering deck, where a breach had flooded the place with lethal particles. One wrong step and they'd join the ghosts. They pushed on, mag boots clanging in the silence. Jax lagged a step, fiddling with his scanner. Radiation spiking. "Suits'll hold, but not forever." His wit surfaced, a shield against the dark. "Think the universe misses our coffee? Bet the Krigari are choking on synth brew." Ilara almost smiled, but a distant rumble shook the deck, something shifting in the wreckage. Not empty after all. She raised her rifle, heart pounding. Eyes open. Whatever's left here, it's not welcoming guests. The corridor narrowed, emergency lights strobing like a dying heartbeat. Debris floated lazily. A severed cable, a cracked datapad etched with a child's drawing, stick figures waving at stars. Ilara swallowed, focusing on the hatch ahead, sealed with a biometric lock. Her hand hovered over the override, but Jax grabbed her arm. "Wait, readings just jumped. Not radiation, motion." His voice dropped, urgent. "Something's alive in there." She met his gaze, the weight of the galaxy's honesty pressing down. No heroes, just 2 humans against the void's teeth. With a nod, she punched the code, the hatch hissing open to reveal shadows that stirred. Captain Reyes gripped the console as the alarm blared, her knuckles white against the worn plasteel. The derelict station loomed in the viewport, its skeletal arms drifting lazily in the void, but it was the faint energy signature pulsing from its core that set her teeth on edge. "Scan it again, Mira," she said, voice steady despite the knot in her gut. Her second in command, ever the cautious one, nodded without looking up from her station, fingers flying over the holographic display. The ship, Endurance, hummed with the low thrum of recycled air and straining engines. They'd been scavenging for months since the fall, Earth's last stand against the Coalition's blockade reduced to ash and orbital debris. Reyes remembered the broadcasts, peaceful alliances crumbling under resource grabs, the universe's polite facades cracking. Now honesty reigned. Survival didn't care for treaties. Mira's voice cut through the tension. "Confirmed, Captain. It's a pre-fall human relay, but modified. Alien tech layered on top, looks like Krell signatures. Could be a trap, or a gold mine." Jax, the wiry engineer lounging against the bulkhead with his toolkit slung over one shoulder, snorted. "Gold mine if we're lucky, graveyard if not. Remember Vega Outpost? Thought it was abandoned, ended up with plasma burns and a limp." His wit masked the scars, but Reyes saw the flicker in his eyes, the same grit that kept him patching the Endurance through hull breaches and fuel shortages. She weighed it, the stakes pressing like the vacuum outside. Their oxygen recyclers were at 62%, food synth at half rations. One good haul could buy them a neutral port, maybe even allies among the independents who'd turned honest after Earth's example. "We're going in," Reyes decided, standing tall. "Jax, suit up for EVA. Mira, plot a docking vector. If it's Krell work, they might have left defenses dormant." The docking clamps engaged with a metallic groan, sealing the Endurance to the station's fractured airlock. Inside, the corridors stretched dim and echoing, emergency lights flickering like dying stars. Dust motes swirled in their helmet beams as the trio advanced, mag boots clanging softly. Reyes led, pulse rifle at the ready, her brave streak pushing against the unknown. Mira trailed, scanner humming, her cautious nature keeping them alert to every shadow. Jax brought up the rear, muttering about jury-rigged panels that screamed hasty retrofit. The first sign of trouble came in engineering. A console sparked to life unbidden, holographic schematics blooming in the air. "Power surge," Mira whispered over comms. "It's awakening, automated defenses online." Alarms wailed faintly, and from the vents crawler drones skittered out, their Krell-designed blades glinting. Reyes fired first, a burst shattering one mid-leap, but the others swarmed, forcing Jax to improvise. He yanked a conduit loose, sparks arcing to fry two more, his laugh sharp. "Told you, gold mine with teeth." They pressed on, the challenge mounting as bulkheads sealed behind them, trapping the path back. The core chamber door hissed open, revealing a chamber pulsing with stolen human tech fused to alien reactors. Earth's ingenuity twisted into something raw, honest in its lethality. A central console beckoned, data streams promising coordinates to untouched supply caches, but guarded by a hulking sentinel drone, its eyes locking on them with mechanical indifference. Reyes signaled, heart-pounding. "Flank it. Mira, hack the overwrites. Jax, cover me." The plan was simple, but as the drone charged, she knew simplicity often shattered first. Bullets ricocheted off its armor, and Mira's interface glitched under interference. Jax dove, wrench in hand, aiming for a weak joint, human grit against alien precision. The drone's claw grazed his suit, tearing fabric but not flesh, a close call that left him cursing vividly. In the chaos, Reyes spotted the override, a manual kill switch buried in the console's base requiring a dive under fire. She rolled, firing blindly, her decision propelling them forward even as the air grew thick with ozone and risk. If they failed here, the Endurance would drift empty, another ghost in the honest void. But pulling this off, it could mean resurgence, a spark of Earth's unyielding spirit. The hum of the ship's engines faltered, a stutter that sent vibrations rattling through the bulkheads like a warning cough. Alara gripped the console, her knuckles whitening as she scanned the readouts. Fuel reserves dipping below critical, the asteroid field's debris pinging off the hull in relentless taps. "We're not making it to the relay like this," she muttered, her voice steady despite the sweat beading on her forehead. Beside her, Jax leaned in, his wiry frame tense, eyes flicking between the nav chart and the viewport where jagged rocks spun lazily in the void. He jabbed a finger at the screen. Bypass the field? Cut through the inner lane? His tone was all grit. No give. The kind of suggestion born from too many close calls on hauler runs. Alara shook her head, calculating trajectories in her head. Too risky, one wrong drift and they'd be scrap. The third crew member, Quiet Theo, hovered at the engineering station, his cautious fingers dancing over panels, rerouting what power he could. Engines are straining, he said softly, not accusing, just fact. We push harder, we blow a line. The decision hung there, thick as the recycled air. Alara straightened, her brave streak kicking in. She'd captained worse than this back when Earth was still a beacon. Theo, seal the auxiliary tanks. Jax, plot the inner lane but keep us shallow. We skim it, not dive. Jax nodded, a wry grin cracking his face. Your funeral, Cap, or ours. As the ship banked, the first real chunk of rock loomed large in the viewport, close enough to see the craters etched like old scars. Elena gripped the console edge as the Vanguard's alarms blared, red lights pulsing across the bridge like a frantic heartbeat. The nebula's tendrils clawed at the hull, ionized gases sparking against the shields in erratic bursts. Jax, reroute auxiliary power to forward deflectors, now, she barked, her voice cutting through the din without a tremor, though her knuckles whitened. Jax slid across the deck on his knees, fingers flying over the engineering panel. On it, Cap. But this soup's thicker than my grandma's stew. Shields are at 62% and dropping. One wrong twitch and we're nebula flambe. His wit masked the sweat beating on his forehead, but his hands didn't falter, patching lines with the precision of a surgeon mid-battle. Mira hunched over the sensor array, her cautious eyes narrowing at the holographic display. Swirls of purple and gold dominated the view, hiding whatever lay ahead. There's a gravitational anomaly dead center. Could be a rogue planetoid or worse. We can't punch through blind. It'll shear us apart. She adjusted her glasses, fingers trembling slightly, not from fear but from the weight of calculation. Earth's fall had taught her hesitation could kill, yet rushing felt like suicide. The ship shuddered, a deep groan echoing from the core as another plasma wave hit. Elena straightened, mind racing through options. Their plan to skirt the nebula's edge had backfired spectacularly. An unexpected current had dragged them into the heart. Resources were already thin, fuel cells at half, oxygen recyclers straining from the three of them plus the cryo-sleepers in the hold. Losing the Vanguard meant losing humanity's last spark. Options? Elena demanded, eyes flicking between her crew. No time for debate. The universe didn't care about their grief over a scorched homeworld. Jack snorted, sealing a flickering conduit. We could vent plasma from the thrusters, create a countercharge to stabilize the shields. Risky, but it'd buy us a window to scan that anomaly properly. Mira shook her head. Too volatile. The feedback could fry the engines. Better to deploy the probe swarm, map a safe vector. It's slower, but... A proximity alert screamed, cutting her off. Something massive loomed in the haze, not rock but metal, sleek, angular, like a predator uncoiling. Alien signatures lit the sensors. A scout vessel from the Krell Collective, those opportunistic scavengers who'd picked Earth's bones clean after the war. They weren't explorers. They were hunters drawn by the Vanguard's distress signal like vultures to carrion. They're locking weapons, Mira whispered, her voice tight. The Krell didn't negotiate. They claimed salvage rights under their twisted code of universal honesty, where the weak forfeited everything. Elena's jaw set. Earth's fall had shattered the galaxy's fragile peace, exposing the raw truths beneath. Alliances were illusions, survival a brutal meritocracy. But humans didn't yield. Jax, prep the vent. Mira, get me a firing solution on their engines. We're not handing over our future without a fight. The engineer grinned fiercely, thumbs hovering over the controls. Aye, Cap. Time to show these squidheads what grit looks like. As the Vanguard lurched forward, engines roaring against the nebula's pull, Elena felt the old fire ignite. The cost would be high, perhaps the ship, perhaps more, but retreat wasn't in their blood. The first plasma burst erupted from their vents, a blazing shield that lit the void like a defiant star. The Krell ship fired back, beams slicing through the gas, but the humans were already adapting, turning chaos into their weapon. Jax wiped the sweat from his brow, the dim emergency lights casting jagged shadows across the engineering bay. The hum of the failing fusion core vibrated through his boots, a relentless reminder that their makeshift patch on the coolant lines was holding by a thread. Elena, you seeing this? He called into the comm, his voice steady despite the knot in his gut. The readings on his tablet flickered, pressure spiking again just like it had an hour ago. From the bridge, Captain Elena's reply crackled through. Affirmative. Mira's rerouting power from non-essentials. We've got maybe 20 minutes before the core overheats and turns us into a fireball. Her tone was all business, the kind that cut through panic like a laser. Elena had always been the anchor, her decisions forged in the fires of Earth's last days. Quick, unyielding, the type to stare down an armada without flinching. Jax knelt beside the access panel, prying it open with a crowbar. Sparks danced as he exposed the tangled mess of conduits, the air thick with the acrid tang of melting insulation. He remembered the stories from the old archives, how humanity's colonies had scattered like seeds after the fall. Each ship a fragile ark in a galaxy that had shed its polite facade. No more treaties or alliances, just raw survival, where honest meant admitting that trust was a luxury you couldn't afford. Their vessel, the Odyssey's Echo, was one such ark, salvaged from the ruins, crewed by 3 souls who'd clawed their way out of the Sol system's collapse. A low groan echoed from the bulkhead and Jax's hands froze. The ship shuddered, inertial dampeners struggling against the pull of the asteroid field's debris. Mira's voice chimed in over the comm, cautious as ever, her words measured like she was dissecting a specimen. Jax, the external sensors show that scavenger drone closing in. It's matching our vector. Probably detected our distress beacon. If they board, we're done. Scavengers, Jax muttered, yanking a loose wire free and splicing it with practiced twists. Wit had always been his shield. Back on the lunar outpost, it had gotten him through more tight spots than brute force. Aliens with a nose for weakness, great. Elena, any chance we can spoof our signature? Make him think we're just another rock? Elena's response was immediate, laced with that gritty determination that had kept them alive through 3 system jumps. Working on it. Mira, isolate the beacon array. Jax, buy us time down there. Reinforce those lines if you have to use your teeth. He chuckled dryly, though it came out more like a cough amid the haze. Grabbing a thermal welder from his toolkit, Jax leaned into the exposed core housing. The metal was scorching even through his gloves, but he forced his fingers steady. One wrong move and the coolant breach would flood the bay, flash freezing him before the fire could claim the rest. Earth's fall had taught them that much. Hesitation killed faster than any weapon. The ship lurched again, harder this time, as if the asteroid belt itself were conspiring against them. Jax glanced at the small porthole, stars smeared into streaks by their erratic maneuvers, and there, glinting like a predator's eye, the scavenger drone. It was a hulking thing, all jagged alloys and probing sensors, remnants of some long-extinct fleet repurposed by opportunistic raiders. No grand empires here, just packs of survivors stripping the void for parts, fuel, anything to keep their own arcs afloat. Honesty in the galaxy meant admitting you were no better. Got a partial seal, Jax announced, the welder's blue arc sealing the rupture with a hiss. But as he pulled back, a secondary alarm blared, pressure equalizing unevenly, the patch cracking under the strain. Damn it, it's failing faster than I thought. Elena, we need to vent the excess heat or we're cooked. On the bridge, Elena gripped the console, her knuckles white. The view screen showed the drone now only kilometers out, its docking clamps extending like claws. Mira hovered at her station, fingers flying over the controls, her cautious nature shining through in the precise calculations, scrolling across her display. Venting would expose our position completely, Mira said, her voice tight. But if we don't, the core hits critical in 12 minutes. Elena waited in seconds, her mind racing through the odds, Earth's grit encoded in every choice. Do it, Jax, seal yourself in the secondary bay. Mira, arm the defenses. We're not handing this ship over without a fight. Jax scrambled, sealing the hatch just as the venting klaxons wailed. A rush of superheated plasma erupted from the hull, painting the void in ethereal blue. Through the reinforced glass, he watched the drone veer sharply, its sensors overwhelmed by the sudden bloom. But the victory was short-lived. The maneuver had destabilized their orbit, and now a massive asteroid loomed on the scanner, hurtling toward them like judgment. The comm erupted in static. Incoming impact in 5, Mira reported, her caution giving way to urgency. Evasive patterns won't clear it, not with the engines at half power. Jax pounded the panel, rerouting what auxiliary power he could. Hold on, I've got an idea. Repurpose the vent thrusters for a slingshot burn. It'll strain the frame, but we might skirt the rock. Elena didn't hesitate. Make it happen. That's an order. As the asteroid filled the porthole, Jax initiated the override. the ship groaning in protest. Metal screamed, but they skimmed the edge, debris pinging off the hull like hail. The drone, caught in the gravitational tug, spiraled away into the field. Honest chaos claiming its due. Breathing heavy, Jack slumped against the wall. The core stabilized for now, but Elena gripped the console, her knuckles whitening as the shuttle's alarms blared a staccato rhythm. The planet's atmosphere clawed at them like invisible talons, turbulence rattling the hull with every gust. "Hold her steady, Mira," she barked, eyes locked on the flickering nav screen. Below, the jagged peaks of Vorath's southern ridge loomed, a graveyard of twisted metal from old wrecks. Reminders that no one survived a bad landing here. Mira's hands danced over the controls, sweat beading on her forehead despite the chill seeping through the seals. "I'm trying, Cap. This junker's got more fight than a cornered Varix. Raj, any readings on that storm front?" From the co-pilot seat, Dr. Raj Patel hunched over his scanner, his cautious fingers adjusting dials with deliberate precision. "It's worsening. Electromagnetic interference at 87%. We're blind in 5 minutes if we don't punch through." His voice carried that familiar edge, not panic but the measured concern of someone who'd seen too many calculations go wrong. He glanced at Elena, his dark eyes reflecting the red glow of the alerts. "We should abort and circle back to the equator site. The ridge is suicide." Elena shook her head, jaw set. The team's last supply run had yielded scraps, enough rations for a week if they stretched it. The equator base was a pipe dream now, overrun by those skittering alien scavengers who'd claimed it hours ago. No, the ridge held promise, sensor ghosts suggesting an untouched cache from the old colonial era, pre-fall. Earth was gone, reduced to orbital debris in the war that shattered the fragile peace. But humanity's grit lingered in forgotten outposts like this. "We commit or we starve," she said flatly. "Mira, dive!" The shuttle bucked as Mira banked hard, engines whining in protest. A sharp jolt threw Raj against his harness, his scanner clattering to the deck. "Elena," he started, but the words died as lightning forked across the viewport, illuminating the canyon walls in stark white. The ship shuddered, proximity alarms screaming as they skimmed a sheer cliff face, debris pinging off the underbelly like hail. "Got it!" Mira whooped, her wit cutting through the tension like a knife. "Eat that, you rocky bastard." But her triumph was short-lived. The console sparked, a panel shorting out in a shower of blue arcs. Smoke curled from the vents, acrid and thick. Elena coughed, waving it away, her mind racing. The early plan had been simple: skim the ridge, drop probes, extractive viable. But the storm had turned it into a gauntlet, and now the nav was glitching, vectors drifting. Raj recovered his scanner, patching it into the main system with a jury-rigged cable. Power surge fried the secondary stabilizers. "We're losing altitude, compensate now." His caution flipped to urgency, hands flying as he rerouted energy from life support. The air grew stuffier, recyclers humming louder to keep up. Elena yanked the yoke, muscles straining. The shuttle nosed up, grazing the canyon lip with a metallic screech that set her teeth on edge. For a heartbeat they cleared it, the ridge's plateau unfolding below, a vast, windswept expanse dotted with the skeletal remains of habitats, half buried in red dust. But the storm's fury followed, whipping sand into a blinding curtain. "Probes away," Mira called, launching the trio of drones with a decisive tap. They streaked out, vanishing into the haze, their signals faint pings on the display. The first probe's feed crackled to life. A cavernous bunker entrance, sealed but intact, its doors warped by time yet unbreached. Elena's pulse quickened. Jackpot. Mark it. We're going in hot. But as the shuttle circled for descent, the second probe's signal spiked erratically. Raj leaned forward, brow furrowing. Anomaly. Energy signature. It's active. Not colonial tech. Before Elena could respond, the third probe went dark, a burst of static swallowing its feed. Mira swore under her breath. Scavengers. Or worse, the aliens they'd glimpsed earlier, those lithe, opportunistic Krell, moved like shadows, stripping wrecks for parts. If they'd beaten them here. The shuttle hit turbulence again, harder this time, slamming them sideways. Elena fought the controls, but the damaged stabilizers betrayed her. The craft listed, scraping wings against an outcrop. Sparks flew inside, the cabin tilting alarmingly. "Brace!" she yelled as the ground rushed up. They crashed with a bone-jarring thud, skidding across the plateau in a plume of dust and scree. The engines coughed out, leaving only the howl of wind and the distant rumble of thunder. Elena unstrapped first, blood trickling from a cut on her forehead tasting copper.
Status?
She demanded, helping Mira to her feet. Mira winced, clutching her side. Shuttle's toast. But I'm walking. Her grin was forced, witty spark dimmed by pain. Raj was already at the hatch, scanner in hand. Hull breach minor, but we're exposed. That energy signature, it's closing in. 2 clicks and gaining. His voice was steady, but his eyes darted to the storm-smeared horizon where faint lights bobbed like predatory eyes. Elena nodded, slinging her pack. The plan had backfired spectacularly. No gentle landing, no safe extraction. Now with the shuttle wrecked and scavengers inbound, the ridge's promise felt like a trap. But turning back meant empty hands, and Earth's ghosts demanded better. To the bunker, she said, leading them into the gale. We adapt or we die honest. The wind tore at their suits as they trudged forward. The plateau a treacherous maze of craters and rusted hulks. Mira limped. Captain Alara Voss gripped the helm of the battered freighter's stellar drift, her knuckles white against the worn controls. Alarms blared as the ship's hull groaned under the strain of the asteroid field's gravitational pull. Hold her steady, Jax, she barked, eyes locked on the flickering nav screen where jagged rocks tumbled like drunken giants. Jax, the wiry engineer with grease-streaked cheeks and a perpetual squint, hunched over the auxiliary console. His fingers danced across the patched wiring, rerouting power from life support to the thrusters. I'm trying, Cap. These rocks are magnetized, pulling us like a bad date. One more hit and we're scrap. From the co-pilot seat, Lyra, the avian scout with iridescent feathers ruffled by the recycled air, tilted her head, her beak clicking in frustration. Humans and your iron ships. My people would glide through this. Scan shows a narrow gap, 3 degrees starboard, but it's closing fast. Ilara didn't hesitate. She yanked the yoke, the drift shuddering as it veered toward the sliver of open space. The first asteroid clipped the port wing, sparks erupting in a silent fireworks display against the void. Inside, the deck plates rattled and a loose panel clattered to the floor. That was too close. Lyra, what's on the other side? The scout's talons tapped the scanner, her voice a melodic trill edged with urgency. Clear for a click then, something. Energy signatures. Not natural. Jax wiped sweat from his brow. Great. Just what we need after dodging the crag patrols. More surprises. Power's at 40%, Cap. We can't dance with whatever's waiting. Alara's jaw set, her mind racing through the fragments of their mission. Earth's fall had scattered humanity like dust, but the drift carried the last VI-able seed vault. Genetic blueprints for rebuilding. The Crag Dominion, those hulking brutes who'd enforced the galaxy's peace with iron fists, now hunted them to erase the human spark. Honest times indeed. No more illusions of unity, just survival's raw edge. They'd evaded the patrols for weeks, but fuel was low, and the nearest neutral port was a myth in this sector. Push through, Alara said, voice steady despite the knot in her gut. We adapt or we die. Jax, prep the emergency burn if it gets ugly. The ship burst from the field into a deceptive calm, stars wheeling into view. But Lyra's warning chirp cut the relief short. On the main viewer, a derelict station loomed, twisted metal orbiting a gas giant, its lights pulsing like a dying heartbeat. Docking arms extended, beckoning, but scans lit up with automated defenses, turrets swiveling, energy fields humming. Looks like a trap, Jax muttered, but his eyes gleamed with that human curiosity, the kind that had built empires from ruins. Not a crag design, Lyra observed, feathers fluffing. Old Alliance tech. Abandoned since the fall. Could be salvage, fuel cells, maybe parts. Alara weighed it. The drift was limping. Another field like that, and they'd be adrift. But trust nothing in this honest universe. Hail it. Low power, no identifiers. The comm crackled, static giving way to a synthesized voice, cold and mechanical. Unidentified vessel, state your purpose. This is Outpost Zeta 9. Resources are rationed. Intruders will be neutralized. Jax leaned in. Play nice, Cap. Tell him we're traitors down on our luck. Ilara keyed the mic. Outpost Zeta 9, this is the Stellar Drift. We're Independents, running low on fuel after a rough patch. Request docking clearance for resupply. Got trade goods, rare minerals from the belt. Silence stretched, broken only by the ship's hum. Then, docking granted. Bay 3. Power down weapons on approach. Lyra's eyes narrowed. They didn't ask for cargo manifests. Too eager. Or desperate, Alara countered, easing the throttle. The station grew, its scarred hull whispering of forgotten wars. As they maneuvered into the bay, clamps engaged with a metallic thud, sealing them in. The airlock cycled, and Alara led the way, pulse pistol holstered but ready. Jax followed, toolkit slung over his shoulder while Lyra perched on his arm, wings half unfurled for quick flight. The corridor beyond was dim, lit by sputtering fluorescence, air thick with the tang of ozone and neglect. A figure emerged from the shadows, a lanky alien with bioluminescent skin flickering blue, clad in patched vac suit. "Welcome," it rasped, four eyes scanning them. "I'm Kale, caretaker. Fuel's scarce, but we can barter." Alara nodded, keeping her stance loose. "Appreciated. Name's Voss, this is my crew." Kale's lights pulsed faster. "Humans, rare sight since the fall. The universe changed. No more pretty lies from the core worlds." Jax chuckled, diffusing the tension. "Yeah, now it's all grit and no glory. You got those cells?" The alien gestured down the hall. "This way. But first a scan, protocol." Lyra tensed, but Alara waved her down. "Fine, quick." The scanner arch hummed as they passed, but midway red lights flared. Alarms wailed. "Anomaly detected." Kale's voice sharpened. "Biocontainment breach. Quarantine." Bulkheads slammed shut, trapping them in a side chamber. Through the viewport, Alara saw Kale retreating, a sly glow in his eyes. It was the seed vault, she realized, patting the hidden pouch at her belt. They smelled it. Elena gripped the console as the ship's alarms blared, red lights pulsing like wounds across the bridge. "Marcus, reroute power to the shields, now." Her voice cut through the din, steady despite the tremor in her hands. The asteroid field loomed on the view screen, jagged rocks tumbling in lazy orbits. But it was the pursuing drones that truly chilled her. Sleek, alien hunters from the Vexari fleet. Closing in with relentless precision, Marcus slid into the engineering station, fingers flying over the holographic keys. "On it, Cap. But these babies are sucking juice like vampires at a blood bank. One more hit and we're ghosting." His wit masked the sweat beading on his forehead, but Elena saw the flicker of doubt in his eyes. They jury-rigged the engines back on Vega Prime, turning scrap into salvation, but out here, honesty meant facing the void without illusions. Earth was gone, shattered in the war that had pacified the stars, and now it was just them, 3 humans and a reluctant Krellian defector named Zor, scavenging for a way to strike back. Lila burst onto the bridge from the medbay, her lab coat smeared with coolant residue. "The hull's holding, but we've got microfractures. If those drones breach—" She stopped, eyes widening at the proximity alert. Cautious as ever, Lila had argued against this shortcut through the belt, predicting exactly this ambush. But Elena's gut had won out. They needed the rare isotopes from the inner rim to arm their prototype weapon, the one that could expose the Vexari's lies to the galaxy. Zor lumbered in behind her, his scaled hide glistening under the emergency lights, 4 arms clutching a toolkit. "Humans fight blind," he rumbled, his translated voice gravelly. Once a Vexari enforcer, he'd turned after witnessing Earth's end. Honesty, he'd called it, the raw truth of survival. "Drones lock on life signs. We mask or die." Elena nodded, mind racing. Their early plan, deploy decoy flares laced with human pheromones, had backfired spectacularly. The Vexari tech adapted faster than expected, ignoring the fakes and zeroing in on the real prize, the Ark's promise, their battered freighter carrying the seeds of rebellion. A drone's plasma bolt grazed the hull, shaking the deck and sending sparks flying from a panel. Marcus cursed, patching the surge manually, his clever bypasses the only thing keeping them alive. "Evac suits on," Elena ordered, pulling hers from the rack. The air grew thick with ozone, the ship's groans echoing like a dying beast. Lila hesitated, scanning readouts. "Radiation spikes incoming. We can't outrun them in this soup." Her caution bordered on paralysis, but it was her scans that had mapped the belt's weak points, turning peril into potential paths. Zor slammed a bulkhead override, sealing off the failing corridor. Their ventral airlock, float the cargo pod as bait. His idea was brutal, efficient. Sacrifice the isotopes to buy time. Elena weighed it, the cost hitting like a gut punch. Those crystals were their shot at unity. Proof humans could outthink the star's self-proclaimed peacekeepers. "No," she said finally, strapping on her helmet. "We adapt. Marcus, sync the pod's beacon to mimic our signature." Lila prepped the EMP burst from the auxiliary core, Overload it just enough to scramble their sensors. The team moved as one, hands blurring in the chaos. Marcus grinned through his visor. Clever, Cap. Like stealing fire from the gods. As the first drone latched onto the hull with a metallic screech, Elena triggered the launch. The pod ejected into the void, a false heartbeat pulsing in the dark. Drones peeled off, swarming the decoy, but not all. 2 remained, firing wildly. Lila's EMP rippled out, a silent wave that fried their circuits mid-pursuit. The ship lurched free, weaving through the asteroids on thrusters alone. But victory tasted bitter. Scans showed the pod breached, isotopes scattering like lost stars. Elena slumped into her chair, the bridge dimming to conserve power. We bought time, but at what price? Zor placed a clawed hand on her shoulder, his honesty a quiet anchor. Price of truth, human. Earth taught us that. The belt receded, but the Vexari signal lingered on comms, a promise of more hunters to come. They pressed on, ingenuity their only weapon, the universe's honesty carving deeper scars. Captain Alara Voss gripped the console as the shuttle lurched, stars streaking past the viewport like accusations. Her gloved hands flew across the controls, rerouting power from life support to the failing engines. "Hold her steady, Jax," she barked, her voice cutting through the whine of straining metal. Beside her, Jax nodded, his fingers dancing over the auxiliary board, sweat beading on his furrowed brow. The alien artifact they'd salvaged from the derelict station pulsed faintly in the cargo hold, its energy signature the only thing keeping the pursuing Krell fighters from vaporizing them outright. The comms crackled to life. "Human vessel, this is Enforcer Prime Thaler. Surrender the relic immediately, or we will board and extract it ourselves." The voice was smooth, laced with the synthetic calm of a species that hadn't known true desperation in centuries. Alara's jaw tightened. The Krell thought they owned the void now. Ever since Earth's collapse had scattered humanity like dust. Peaceful. The galaxy had been a sanitized illusion, treaties and alliances papering over the rot. Now, with humans loose and unmoored, honesty meant survival. No more pretty lies. "Not a chance, Thaler," she replied, thumbing the transmit. "This thing's ours. You want it? Come take a swing." Jax glanced at her, his cautious eyes widening. "Ilara, their scanners will pick up the artifact's emissions any second. We can't outrun them in this crate." She shot him a grin, fierce and unyielding. Who said anything about running? Her fingers initiated the sequence, dumping auxiliary fuel into the thrusters. The shuttle bucked forward, a desperate burst that shaved seconds off the Krell's closing distance. In the hold, the artifact hummed louder, its crystalline facets glowing with an inner fire that mirrored the grit in her veins. Alarms blared as the first plasma bolt grazed their shields. Alara banked hard, the inertial dampeners groaning under the strain. Mira, their engineer, shouted from the rear compartment, "Shields at 30%. If we take another hit like that, we won't." Alara cut in, her mind racing through the schematics. The relic wasn't just some ancient curiosity. Scans showed it interfaced with quantum fields, a human edge in a universe that had forgotten how to improvise. "Jax, sync the artifact to the nav computer. Let's see if this thing can bend space like the old probes said." He hesitated, his witty retort dying on his lips as another volley lit up the sensors. "You're insane. What if it rips us apart? Then we go out honest." Alara's voice held no tremor, only the resolve that had kept her crew alive through a dozen scrapes since the fall. Jax complied, cables snaking from the hold to the bridge. The artifact's energy surged, a low thrum vibrating through the deck plates. The Krell ships closed in, their sleek forms predatory against the nebula's glow. Thaler's voice returned, edged with impatience. "Your species' bravado is noted, but futile. The relic belongs to the collective." Ilara laughed, short and sharp. "Collective? That's your word for thieves." The shuttle shuddered as the artifact linked, reality warping at the edges of the viewport, stars blurring into impossible geometries. She punched the coordinates for the fringe jump point, a gamble no sane pilot would take without a fleet's backup. Mira stumbled onto the bridge, tools clanking at her belt. "It's stabilizing, but the feedback it's pulling from our core systems." "Hang on," Ilara said, eyes locked on the readouts. The Krell fired again, the bolt shearing off a sensor array in a shower of sparks. Pain lanced through her arm from a loose panel, but she ignored it, twisting the yoke. The shuttle dove, the artifact's field enveloping them like a shroud. Space folded. One moment the Krell loomed. The next they were through. The jump point's chaos spitting them out into uncharted sectors. Alarms quieted to a murmur, the engines coughing back to life. Jack slumped in his seat, exhaling. We made it, barely. Ilara released the controls, her hands trembling now that the rush faded. Blood trickled from a gash on her forehead, warm against her skin. Barely's our specialty. But as the sensors cleared, a new blip appeared. Not Krell, but something older. A shadow drifting from the debris of a long-forgotten war. Mira leaned over the scans, her cautious optimism cracking into concern. That's no wreck. It's broadcasting a distress signal in Old English. Ilara straightened, the artifact's glow reflecting in her eyes. Honesty in the void meant facing what came next, no matter the cost. Patch it through. Let's hear what the ghosts have to say. The signal resolved, a voice crackling from the past. Fragmented words of warning, of a trap laid eons ago. The relic wasn't salvation, it was a key, and they'd just turned it in the wrong lock. Jax rubbed his chin, wit returning. Great, from enforcers to echoes. What's our play? We adapt, Ilara said, already plotting a course. The shuttle hummed onward. The universe's honesty stripping away illusions, one revelation at a time. But in the quiet she felt the weight. Earth's fall hadn't ended humanity. It had unleashed it, and now the stars demanded their due. Elena gripped the console as the Vanguard's hull shuddered, the alien debris field closing in like a swarm of jagged teeth. Sparks flew from the overhead panel and she tasted blood where she'd bitten her lip. Jax, talk to me. How much time before that reactor breach turns us into confetti? Jax, wedged under the engineering station, his wiry frame slick with sweat, yanked a conduit free with a curse. 5 minutes, maybe less. The core's flooding with plasma from that last hit. If I can't reroute the coolant, we're done. His voice carried that sharp edge, the wit buried under urgency, as he twisted a valve with hands that trembled just enough to betray the fear. Mira's face flickered on the secondary screen. Patched in from the auxiliary lab, her eyes wide behind smudged glasses darted to readouts only she could decipher. The debris is accelerating. Gravitational pull from the wreck ahead. We can't maneuver without ripping the thrusters off. Cautious as ever, she hesitated, fingers hovering over her controls. Elena pulling back might buy us space, but it'll drain the reserves we need for the jump. No. Elena's decision snapped out, her brave streak pushing through the ache in her chest. Earth's fall had taught her hesitation was a luxury they couldn't afford. Not with the Krell hunters trailing their ion wake, those scaled bastards who saw human scraps as easy pickings. The Vanguard was all they had left. A battered freighter carrying the last viable seed vault, humanity's stubborn bet on a new start. Losing it meant the end, not just for them, but for the ghost of a species too damn gritty to fade quietly. She slammed the comms override. All hands brace for evasive. Jax, give me options, anything. The ship groaned as she banked hard, dodging a tumbling girder the size of a shuttle. Alarms wailed, red lights painting the bridge in bloody hues. Jax popped up, face smeared with grease, a makeshift patch in his hand. A jury-rigged exchanger he'd cobbled from salvage parts. Got one wild idea. We vent the forward bays, use the explosive decompression to slingshot us clear. But it'll trash the cargo holds. Seeds might not survive the shock. Mira's voice cut in, strained. The vault's reinforced, but untested. If they rupture, she trailed off, the risk hanging unspoken. Those seeds weren't just plants. They were engineered miracles, Earth's final ingenuity against barren worlds. One breach and their shot at terraforming went up in vacuum. Elena met Jax's gaze, seeing the question there. Her team, family really, had pulled them through black holes and blockades, their camaraderie forged in the fire of loss. Earth's honest end had stripped the universe of pretenses. No more galactic accords, just survival raw and real. Do it, she said, voice steady. Better some seeds than none. Jax nodded, slamming the vent controls. The ship bucked violently, air howling out in a furious rush. Debris pinged off the hull like hail, but momentum shifted. The Vanguard surged forward, propelled by its own desperate exhale. Elena's stomach lurched as they skimmed the wreck's edge, the Krell signatures blinking faint on sensors thrown off by the maneuver. But triumph soured fast. Mira's feed glitched, then stabilized on her pale face. Hull integrity at 23%. We're leaking atmo from the bays and the vault's compromised. Scans show 40% viability loss. Elena's knuckles whitened on the arms of her chair. The cost landed heavy, a lingering scar on their gamble. Jack slumped back, wiping his brow. We bought time, Cap, but those hunters'll regroup. What's next? She scanned the stars ahead, the honest void staring back. A faint signal pulsed. Another human echo, maybe, or just wishful static. "We adapt," she murmured, plotting the course. Like always. The engine hummed unevenly, a reminder that victory was never clean, but it was theirs, for now. Kyle gripped the railing as the deck shuddered, the hum of failing engines vibrating through his boots like a dying heartbeat. Sparks danced from the overhead conduits, casting erratic shadows across the bridge where Mira hunched over her console, fingers flying across the flickering holographic display. "Shields at 12%, she muttered, her voice steady despite the sweat beading on her forehead. "That last barrage clipped us good. If they cycle their weapons again, we're vapor." Jax, ever the optimist with a wrench still clutched in his grease-streaked hand, slammed a panel shut behind the captain's chair. "Optimist here. Rerouted auxiliary power to the forward arrays. It'll hold for one more volley, maybe two if the gods of scrap metal are kind." He flashed a grin that didn't reach his eyes, the kind that said he was calculating odds no one wanted to hear. Captain Alara didn't look up from the tactical overlay, her jaw set like the hull plating they'd just reinforced. The viewer showed the enemy cruiser looming closer, its sleek alien line scarred from their guerrilla hits but still dwarfing the battered human frigate. Relentless. What had started as a salvage run in the asteroid belt, scrounging for parts after Earth's collapse, had turned into this. A standoff with the Vexari Patrol, those self-righteous enforcers of the old galactic peace who'd branded humans as the Chaos Bringers. Peaceful? Huh. That illusion shattered when Earth fell, revealing the universe's underbelly of raw ambition and survival. Now honesty meant fighting for every breath. "They're hailing," Mira said, her cautious nature kicking in as she hesitated over the comms. "Should I patch it through?" Alara cut in, straightening her shoulders. The Vexari commander's face materialized, all angular features and glowing implants, his voice a synthetic purr laced with disdain. "Human vessel, you trespass in secured space. Surrender your cargo and crew, or we end this farce." Ilara leaned forward, her brave streak shining through the fatigue. "Farce? Your peace starved us out, Vexari. Earth's gone because of blockades like yours. We're not surrendering Jack. We're taking what's ours." She killed the channel before he could retort, turning to her team. "Jax, what's the status on that jury-rigged torpedo?" "Loaded and mean," he replied, wiping his hands on his jumpsuit. "But their point defense will shred it unless we get a blind shot. Mira, you still got eyes on their sensor blind spot?" Mira nodded, pulling up the scan. "Affirmative, port side, amidships. But it's narrow. One wrong twitch and we're lit up." Her fingers trembled slightly. Caution had kept her alive through the fall, but it warred with the fire Ilara ignited in them all. The ship lurched as another energy beam grazed the hull, alarms blaring. Ilara braced against the console. "Helm, evasive pattern delta. Hug those rocks. Jax, fire when we're in position. Mira, jam their targeting if you can." They moved like a single organism, years of camaraderie forged in the ruins of Sol system honing their edges. The relentless weaved through the asteroid field, debris pinging off the shields like hail. Jax counted down from the weapons station, his wit surfacing in the tension. 3, 2, if this works, drinks on me. If not, well, at least we'll go out with a bang. The torpedo launched with a whoosh that rattled the bulkhead, streaking toward the Vexari blind spot. For a heartbeat, hope flickered. Then the enemy ship's countermeasures flared, a web of drones intercepting the projectile mid-flight. It detonated harmlessly, the explosion lighting the void like a false dawn. "Damn it," Ilara growled, slamming her fist on the armrest. The Vexari cruiser pivoted, weapons charging with an ominous glow. Shields dropped to 8%. The next hit would breach the hull. Mira's eyes widened at her readouts. "They're locking on, full broadside." Jack spun from his station, mind racing. "Wait, those drones, they're still clustered from the intercept. If we vent plasma from the engineering deck, fake a core breach, we could draw them in and overload their net." Ilara's gaze snapped to him, weighing the risk. Venting plasma meant exposing their engines, inviting disaster if the bluff failed. But surrender? That meant chains, erasure of what little humanity clung to. "Do it. Mira, coordinate the vent with a sensor ghost. Make it look like we're dying." As Jax dashed to engineering, the ship groaned under the strain. Mira's hands blurred over controls, crafting the illusion of a catastrophic failure. The Vexari hesitated, their commander no doubt second-guessing the easy kill. Plasma vented in a brilliant plume, drawing the drones like moths. Jax's voice crackled over the intercom. Overload primed, say the word. Alara watched the tactical feed, heart pounding. The drones swarmed the plasma cloud, their fields destabilizing. Now, the overload hit, a chain reaction ripping through the enemy net. Drones detonated in sequence, the feedback surge crippling the Vexari's weapons array. Smoke billowed from their hull on the viewer, systems flickering offline. But victory came at a cost. The relentless listed, secondary explosions from the vent rocking the frame. Alarms wailed, hull breach in engineering, life support straining. Jax's comms went silent mid-report, leaving Alara staring at the empty channel. Mira sealed the breach bulkheads, her face pale. He's trapped in there, radiation levels spiking. Alara unstrapped, grabbing a breather mask. Suit up. We're getting him out. The bridge fell quiet save for the creak of stressed metal. The weight. The dim glow of the auxiliary console flickered like a dying star as Lena punched in the final overrides, her fingers slick with sweat and grime. Around her, the bridge of the Endurance hummed with the strained rhythm of failing systems. Sparks spitting from exposed wiring, the air thick with the acrid bite of overheating circuits. Jax leaned against the bulkhead, his bandaged arm cradling the makeshift plasma welder they jury-rigged from scavenged parts, eyes locked on the viewport where the asteroid field's jagged silhouettes loomed closer. It's holding, he muttered, voice rough from hours of shouting over alarms. Barely. But if that core breach widens... Kira didn't look up from her station, her wiry frame hunched over the nav controls, calculating trajectories with the precision of someone who'd long ago traded hope for habit. It won't. Not if I thread us through the narrow pass. Earth's ghost is with us. Those old probe schematics you pulled from the archives, they're the only reason we're not dust already. She glanced at Marcus, slumped in the command chair, his face pale under the bruises from the earlier skirmish with the raiders. He'd taken the hit meant for her, buying them time to seal the hull. Now his breath came in shallow rasps, but his grip on the comm panel was ironclad, relaying encrypted bursts to the few Allied ships trailing in their wake. The ship shuddered as another micrometeor grazed the shields, the impact reverberating through the deck like a hammer on bone. Lena's plan had been a gamble from the start. Repurpose the Endurance's dormant fusion drive, overclock it with human-engineered capacitors salvaged from pre-fall relics, and punch a vector through the densest part of the belt. No alien tech, no borrowed miracles, just grit and the kind of math that had built empires from mud. But the raiders, those opportunistic swarms who'd picked over Earth's corpse, had anticipated the route. Their interceptors had harried them for cycles, forcing detours that drained fuel and frayed nerves. Vector locked, Kira announced, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. Engage in 3, 2. The engines roared to life, a primal bellow that drowned out the sirens. Jax braced against the console, welding the last seam on the auxiliary coolant line just as steam hissed from a fracture. Marcus coughed, tasting blood, but keyed the all-ship broadcast. All hands, this is it. We carve the path or we don't, for the ones we lost, for the honest stars. The Endurance surged forward, weaving through the asteroid choke point with a grace born of desperation. Rocks the size of habitats tumbled in slow, lethal arcs, but Kira's adjustments, fueled by Jax's real-time scans and Lena's predictive algorithms, kept them inches from collision. A raider fighter darted in from the flank, its weapons charging with a whine that pierced the hull. Marcus fired the countermeasures, chaff blooming like metallic snow, while Lena diverted power from life support to the point defense grid. The enemy ship veered too late. A lucky fragment from the field shredded its wing, sending it spiraling into oblivion. Tension coiled tighter as the core temperature spiked, red lights bathing the bridge in bloody hues. Jax dropped the welder, grabbing Lena's shoulder. It's gonna blow if we don't vent. No, she snapped, eyes fierce. We adapt. Reroute the excess through the inertial dampeners. It'll shake us like hell, but it'll buy the burn. Her hands flew across the keys, the code compiling in seconds. A human hack, raw and unpolished, but unbreakable. The ship bucked violently, crew thrown against restraints, but the drive stabilized. Outside, the field parted just enough, a fleeting corridor of void revealing the distant gleam of habitable space. Alarms silenced one by one as they cleared the gauntlet, the raiders' pursuit faltering in the debris wake. Kira eased back on the throttles, her exhale a shared release. Marcus managed a grin through the pain, nodding at the stars ahead, unclaimed, unforgiving, but theirs. We made it, he rasped. Not pretty, but honest. Lena wiped her brow, staring at the console's green readouts. The Endurance was scarred, her systems limping, and Marcus would need real medbays soon. But in the quiet that followed, with Jax clapping Kira's back and the first Allied signals pinging in, the weight of Earth's fall felt a fraction lighter. They'd turned survival into something more, a foothold carved by hand for whatever came next. The universe, once veiled in fragile peace, now laid bare its truths, and humanity, battered but unbowed, met them head-on.